Hey guys, well today I want to do another project with birch oil, this time more specifically a birch tar. I'm going to make a birch tar or birch oil glue, attempt to make it anyway. First, before I get started though, let's take a look at the difference between the oil and the tar. For me, when I make the birch oil, every time I make it I need a new container for the burn to stuff the birch oil in, or the birch bark inside the container, because it gets so deformed and so messed up that it's really hard to reuse it. That popcorn tin, I actually tried to reuse that, and the whole burn I was fighting. If you can imagine, it's just like making char cloth. So if it's not a semi-airtight seal, your stuff inside there is going to burn. So my birch bark, I could see it was burning, whatever. So it didn't work very good. But it did make a tar, because I left it on there for quite a while. But anyway, let's take a look at what an oil is like, okay? So it's full up to about here. So I can take this oil and I can smear it around, okay? It's not really sticky, it's just kind of like oil is, just, straight up oil. It rubs in, not sticky. Now, and this is obvious because it actually congealed quite a bit, but when I first took this off of the, took it out of the ground and stuff, it was actually quite runny because it was heated up. But if you put your finger in there, that's going to be sticky. That's kind of how you can tell. Just a kind of a quick down and dirty, and it doesn't really rub in that good. It's real heavy. So what I want to do is boil this down a little bit further, not too much, I think it's pretty close, and I'm going to add a couple more ingredients, primarily charcoal. I powdered this up already. You can make this with, this is basically the same as making a pine pitch glue. I found a couple of little rabbit pellets, but really not much worth mentioning. So here we go. Let's get a fire started and see if we can't make some of this stuff. So basically I just want to keep kind of a small fire. It's quite windy out, in case you hadn't noticed. But I just want to boil this down a little bit more. Try not to burn it. I want this to congeal completely when I take it off the fire. In other words, when it cools down, I want it to be pretty hard. Okay, well, I've noticed a change in it. It's not boiling, it won't froth up like it did before. I've got it on this direct, high, very high heat, and it's going to bubble and pop a little bit, but it's not doing that frothy boil like it was. And that's real hot for my hands just to hold it there, but you can see something's going on with it. So that tells me it's undergone a change, obviously. And I think now what I want to do is let it cool and see if it doesn't congeal like kind of what I want it to. Okay, I was trying to boil this down to where, like I said, if it would cool down it would congeal a little bit. I haven't been letting it cool down as much as I need to, I don't think, because this is really reduced quite a bit. It's not boiling, so I think it's time to add the other ingredients. Supposedly you want 2 parts birch oil or birch tar and 1 part charcoal. And if you got the rabbit poop, I think you want 3 parts, or 1 part rabbit poop, 1 part charcoal, and 3 parts birch oil. But I'm just going to kind of guesstimate. That looks about right. I don't think it's rocket science, to be honest with you. I ground it up pretty fine. I want this to mix in there real good. Okay, well, I got it off the fire and it does seem to be congealing pretty nice. Try to get all this stuff out there off the bottom there. This is definitely a different process than pine pitch glue. I'll say that. Pine pitch glue is pretty straightforward. You render down the pitch to a nice product and then add your ingredients and it cools. There's no guesstimating as to whether or not it's been boiled down enough or anything like that. It just cools and then you're done. Okay, now I can feel it starting to hard up a little bit better. It's tacky to the touch, but it's not, and I just need to let it cool down a little bit more. But like right at the end there, it's getting those nice, I don't even know what to call that or how to explain it, but basically it's grabbing a hold and then that'll dry and become kind of hard. So I just need to take my time with it as opposed to pine pitch glue, which goes a little bit faster. Okay, so I made 2 blobs of black goo so far, and that's it. I mean, really that's it, unless it's been tested. It's not hardening up quite as much as I thought it would. I've used pine pitch glue and it becomes quite hard but not brittle, and the only way I can really see if I actually did it right is to test it out. Now, keep in mind, this isn't going to be, Gorilla Glue or something. I mean, this is a primitive type glue that works, that I've used on like cordage and stuff to keep the wraps closed. And, I mean, it did a fair job of that, but it's not going to be, we're not talking super glue here, I'm going to try to mate these 2 pieces of bark together. See what happens after it cools. Okay guys, taking these and smacking them down on the table, that kind of is just like a brittle test or whatever. They seem to hold up pretty good. They aren't quite as hard as pine pitch glue sticks. Like I said, I can make indents in them. Now whether that's normal for birch oil glue, I'm not sure. Birch tar oil. They were a tiny bit tacky, so what I did is I just crushed up some more charcoal and then just kind of rolled that, and now they're fine. I will say one thing, this stuff is quite tacky. I mean, I got crap on my fingers and it ain't coming off too easy. So, let's see what happens here. I tore the bark instead of tearing the glue. Now, like I said, this is a pretty, this isn't Gorilla Glue, so it's not like I'm holding the car up by, anything. But that's a pretty good test, I think. I mean, there's a lot of, the bark ripped instead of the glue. I think it's a pretty good test, because this is something that you would use it on, would be to binding your birch bark together, or lashing your cordage around something and then finishing it off with that glue. So I'd call it a success. So I think it was pretty cool. First time doing this project, and I like it. It's a lot of work. If you have pine in your area, I'd recommend using pine instead of this birch oil. I think I'd rather keep it as an oil and use it that way, but it's still fun to learn. All right, guys, take care.